Do you feel as if you don't belong? Do you know you were meant for something more? Well, you were. Knowledge of who you are and where you really are from is within your reach. Join Janet Carol-Lessin and Dr. Sasha Lessin as they search for the answers as they open up the stargate to the cosmos.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Stargate to the Cosmos. And I'm your host, Janet Carol-Lessin, and I'm here with my co-host, Dr. Sasha Alex Lessin. And our producer today is Deborah DeFranco, and you're listening to Revolution Radio Studio B. And our guest today is Jai Uttal. We're going to talk about sacred devotional music as a healing energy, Bhakti Yoga. And Jai is a Grammy-nominated sacred music composer, recording artist, multi-instrumentalist, and ecstatic vocalist, combines influences from India with influences from American rock and jazz, and he creates a stimulating and exotic multicultural fusion that is truly world spirit music. He's traveled extensively in India, where he met great saints and singers. Bhakti Yoga became his personal path. He's been teaching and performing kirtan around the world for close to 50 years, creating a safe environment for all people to open their hearts and voices. So, what would you like to say?
Well, I hope you'll tell us about your early intimations, spiritual intimations, and how the path grabbed you and took you.
Yes, welcome to our show.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me.
We're so grateful to have you. Thanks for coming on the show.
It's my pleasure. I wish I was there with you in person in Maui.
Well, come back again.
Okay.
But it's hot today, so maybe better temperature where you are. It's kind of hot today. So, yeah, tell us about, how did you get started? You know, this is you've been doing this for 50 years. So what inspired you?
Well, you know, I started playing music when I was really young, piano, and went through some lessons and really didn't like it, and kind of stepped back until I discovered, when I was around 10 or 11, I discovered the banjo, the 5-string banjo. And, you know, not many people know this about me, but that was my first musical love. And I found in it, in the sounds of the strings, a sanctuary, like a safety that I hadn't felt before. And my early family life was not safe. And so music then became a sanctuary for me. And you know, shortly after that, I started hearing Indian music and was really, really interested and turned on by it. And now, you know, as I was a teenager, right after high school, I started studying Indian music with a great master named Ali Akbar Khan. And he began to show us aside from the, you know, incredible nuances of melody and rhythm, he also began to show us the potent spiritual quality in music and transformational quality. And then, you know, after a couple of years with Ali Akbar Khan, I went to India, where I met Neem Karoli Baba, who is my guru. And well, prior to that, I had met an Indian yoga teacher, and he was teaching me some of the chants, and they called the kirtans that were popular in the area that he grew up in. You know, chants to Krishna, chants to Shiva, the different deities of Hinduism. And I really, really enjoyed that. But then when I went to India and began to hear the music, both the classical music as well as the devotional temple music, in the atmosphere in which it was born, you know, then my insides got turned, I got turned inside out, and the power of this sacred music just, I really felt it, really saw it, but not mentally, like just in my molecules. And when I was with my guru in India, chanting, kirtan chanting was the backdrop. It was the soundtrack to everything else that was happening. Because in his temples, he had people who sang kirtan 24 hours a day, chanting. And, beautiful melodies.
Could you tell our listeners, what's kirtan mean? What does kirtan mean? What does the person that never heard that word before take?
Okay, yeah, it's the chanting of ancient Sanskrit mantras, mostly mantras that are just the names of the deities, God, goddess, and it's the chanting over and over and over again in different melodies and different rhythms and different emotions and different moods, but the repetition, which is both an invocation, celebration, and also, like a place to sing all your deepest pains and sorrows. Usually kirtan is sung in a group, so you have this, incredible group. I think the word is entrainment, where everybody starts tuning into each other's energy and the energy builds. But kirtan is also done alone in solitary. And it's become really the center, I guess I could say, well, certainly of my spiritual practice, but of my music as well. I compose music, Sasha, as you know, my music has gone through many, 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 many different changes over the years, from rock, reggae, jazz, whatever. But always the center of that is the mantra chanting, the sacred Sanskrit syllables from ancient India.
And what year did you go to India?
That first time? Yeah, I've been there many, many, many times, but the first time was 1971, I believe, or 1970. I guess 1970, because I was 19.
And were you influenced by the Beatles? Or what made you think of India? Back then in the 60s, I was a child of the 60s. It was like, the Beatles, and they went to India. Did that have any influence on you?
Everything and anything the Beatles did had influence on me. I wouldn't say that I went to India because of the Beatles, but because prior to the Beatles' interest in India, I was already hearing the music, and I was entranced with anything from India. I would go through the record stores and find Indian records, and if I saw a poster of something Indian, I was just obsessed with it. The question of where that came from, I can't answer. But certainly, I was and still am a Beatle maniac. And so when I saw they went to India, I really followed that closely. That was like, wow, they're going to India. I'm going to India. But I wouldn't say it was a cause and effect. You know what I mean?
Right. Uh-huh.
Part of the same wave. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I didn't go to India, but I was affected. I didn't go to India, but you did.
Yeah. And then I went many, many times. I've been many, many times. But that was the first one.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So you were saying that, and I'm sorry we distracted you. What was he saying?
Well, it's just fascinated with the phenomenon of the kirtan, because you have what happens in order to put so much attention on the exact sounds and replicating it with your own biology, that all the extraneous thoughts go away, and all that's left is this entrainment, or this congruent field that you make with other people, and it's wonderful. It's a heart field.
Yeah, it's a very different kind of concert, my music is extremely important. Learning music, exploring music, creating music is my whole life. But having that music be a vehicle for kirtan, group chanting. And, I guess I feel really lucky. I kind of knew what I was doing and what my life was about from when I was a teenager. And as I was started to say, it's really different than going to a concert. So if somebody came to my kirtan, they'll hear hopefully really beautiful music, but at the same time they'll be singing with me, and and dancing with me, and after a while you feel like everybody in the room is actually the band, and that's when everyone's energies get so kind of vibrating together, and then the kind of that window that I don't know, the sky opens up, and the angels come, and the gurus from long millennia past come, and you kind of really feel it, and it's just super uplifting.
Yes.
Yeah, and go ahead.
Go ahead. Story. I was just going to ask you if you felt any kind of past life draw, like you were coming home again. Well, it was so familiar to you.
When I first landed in India, my first trip to India, when I had this incredible experience, just as we were debarking from the plane, it was in Delhi, and it was in 1970, and just the smells that were in the air, the wood fires, and I don't know, just coming down the steps from the airplane, I felt like the whole previous part of my life I had been in exile, and that now I was home. And it was strange because it's not like the New Delhi airport in 1969 or not 1970 was so beautiful or anything. It was pretty funky, but something in the air, it was such a palpable feeling of coming home. Now, I haven't had past life recollections, a couple of flashes at times, but I don't know all that much about that. But I believe that I must have been in India many past lives because it's been so much a part of this life.
Yes. Well, go ahead, continue your story, and then we'll have some questions. So you're in India, and you're going back.
Yeah. Well, okay. So I went to India to see a man who I thought was my guru. When I arrived in India, I had never met him, and I arrived in India, and it turned out he was in jail for mass murder. So, so my agenda was cut, right? Everything I had thought I was going to do, I was no longer going to do. But so what? For some reason, it wasn't like this grand disillusionment and sadness. It was more like, it became very clear that my connection to this man was totally created in my own mind, because I wanted to have a guru. I wanted to be enlightened, or whatever that meant. But so I had kind of created this mental relationship with this guy who wasn't even really real. So when it turned out that we weren't going to go see him and all this other stuff, I actually felt a sense of relief. And was, just being in India then, even New Delhi, well, we were staying in Old Delhi. It was like medieval times, and it was just so fascinating. But I was wandering around, and I came to a spiritual bookstore in New Delhi, and I walked in, and I was looking around, and the guy told me, "Hey, do you know that Ram Dass is giving classes at this nearby hotel?" So I was friendly with Ram Dass, acquainted, not close friends, but friendly with him from here in California, like from when he came back first from his very first trip to India. And he had come and visited my home that a group house that was sharing with a bunch of yogi people. And so I thought, and I had read his book, Be Here Now, and really was moved by it. So I thought, okay, whatever, I'll go to the hotel and, go to one of Ram Dass's classes to see what's going on. I got to the hotel and they said that Ram Dass had left and had gone to a nearby village to see his guru. Now, as I said, my whole agenda in India was upended. I didn't have any plans. So my friends and I was with 2 or 3 friends, and we said, okay, well, we're not interested in any gurus anymore. We kind of blasted through that one. But why don't we follow the breadcrumbs and go say hi to Ram Dass? So we did, and we got to this little village called Vrindavan, which is a very historic and sacred place. It's the town where Lord Krishna lived when he was a child, and his beloved Sri Radha lived her whole life. By the way, and today is Krishna's birthday, so we were doing a bunch of chanting earlier today, just kind of to celebrate the birth of the deathless one. And, it's such a perceptual switch there. But anyway, it was an incredible place where every other house, it seemed, was a temple. And all, it was all cobblestone or sandy streets because, it was by the Yamuna River and there were no cars allowed in the town. It was like ancient India. And you walk down the streets and you hear all these prayers, this singing, this chanting coming from every direction. It was just so magical. And I met a bunch of people who were waiting to see Neem Karoli Baba, who is Ram Dass's guru. And it turned out that they had been with him and he had told everybody to leave and not come back for a week, because that's something that he did a lot. He would disappear or he would tell people to leave. He was not one of these gurus who was trying to get disciples. He was a guru who pushed away the disciples. And anyway, at the end of the week, I went to, with the other people, I went to this little temple to see him. And I remember being there first thing in the morning. It was just it was a temple to Hanuman, the monkey god. And then you walked back behind the temple and it was just a dirt courtyard with a small wooden table in the middle of it, covered by a thin woolen blanket. So there was nobody there. And so I sat down and there was this chanting, this kirtan chanting coming out of the loudspeaker that some people in the other part of the temple were singing. And it was so beautiful. It was so transcendentally beautiful. And then, people gathered, but still there was no Maharaji. The guru wasn't there. And after some time, with a huge clang, these old wooden doors and wooden hinges slammed open, and Maharaji, that's what we called him, Maharaji bounded across the courtyard. He was old, and there was 2 guys helping him walk, but he ran, and they were left in the dust, and he just jumped onto this little wooden table and started throwing fruit at everybody and laughing and having all these conversations simultaneously while the kirtan was going on. And I was, I was like, well, I don't want a guru, but this guy is completely fascinating. So, and then after a little while, we were all fed this amazing meal. And when anyone offered any money to pay for it, they were just like, they would not take any money. And then I went back to my little hotel and I was just kind of dazed, So I went back each day and I listened, and I walked around the village a lot, listening to all the different people chanting kirtan. And for those listeners who aren't familiar, the kirtan can get extremely energetic. There's great traditional drumming that goes with it. It can be very quiet and introspective, but it can also be just loud and jubilant and, filled with longing and filled with ecstasy. So I would go just around the streets and just listen and sometimes sit in these small little temples and just drink it all in. And meanwhile, then every day I was going to spend time with Maharaji. And then Maharaji told all the Westerners who just wanted to gather around him, he would send us to the other side of the courtyard and told us to sing kirtan. And none of us really knew anything about it. But, I knew just like a couple of melodies and mantras, and another person knew a couple of melodies and mantras. So, so we just sang. And it seemed like our singing made Maharaji really happy, so we were happy to do it. I don't know exactly where the story is going, but
it's wonderful. In the counterculture, it's like our hootenannies or sing-alongs where we sung for love and peace, and it's the same spirit. I can feel the same spirit in that gathering that we have make for ourselves too.
Yeah, it is the same spirit. My feeling towards it, well, like, every ancient culture, any indigenous culture has practices that are similar to this, like where people sing together, where people drum together, and either get in a trance together, or praying together, or just singing songs and joyfully singing together. And I feel like in the kirtan practice, it's exactly that, but it's combined with this one other, what I might call formula, which is these mantras, these ancient mantras, which are, I believe, and have experienced, which have their own inherent power. So all the emotional uplifting that comes whenever a group of people come together and sing together, whatever they're singing, it add to that the repetition of these mantras, and it becomes like it's just the best. I don't know what to say. It's such a transformative experience every time. So, I never thought that singing kirtan would be a career for me. It was the last thing on my mind. I always knew that my life was going to revolve around music. And, in my late teens, I realized that the music that I wanted to play was sacred music, whatever form that took. Like I was really also super into Jimi Hendrix, and I considered Jimi Hendrix sacred music. And so it's not like specifically Indian, but I didn't think I was going to be a singer. I was just more of like a instrumentalist. And then when I started studying classical Indian music with Ali Akbar Khan, he wouldn't teach anybody instrumental music unless they also studied vocal music. So, so I started to sing, and I was doing, kirtan was my private thing I would do by myself or with my friends. And then at the same time, I was in bands, reggae bands and rock bands, and that was sort of where I thought my career would be. But, to make a very, very, very long story short, gradually, certain doors started closing while other doors started opening, and people wanted me to come and both teach and lead kirtan. And at first I was very resistant. I certainly didn't want to put myself in a position where I was a spiritual teacher. That was the last thing I wanted to do. But I also was happy to share this practice, And Sasha, you saw me with the Pagan Love Orchestra. Now, that for many years, that was my complete focus of my creativity and my ambition. And I feel like that band, it was bringing together devotional music from India and mantra and jazz and everything. And
Yeah.
we had a really beautiful run, but then through a variety of circumstances, the doors for that started closing. I think one of the problems was that the band was so big that financially no one could really afford to hire us, even if we were working for very low pay. And we're still all friends, and occasionally I do projects with the same guys. But so as that started to peter out, which I will say was a disappointment for me, but at the same time is when, I kept getting asked by so many places to come and lead Kirtan. And so I did, and I was, I had so much stage fright when it came to singing. But, as time evolved, I worked with that, and suddenly I found that my livelihood was singing Kirtan with people. And I just, it was like, how the heck did that happen? And like when your deepest personal spiritual practice becomes your public, way of making a living, and just what you do in the public, it challenges, inner challenges arise. And yet, regardless of that, I feel so lucky to be able to do this and make a living. It's not much of one, but it's enough that myself, my wife, and our son are able to live and eat organic food. So that's a really long story. That's a long story made short, because, I'm 69 and I started doing this in my teenage years. So it's hard to encapsulate that all in a couple of paragraphs.
Because the question is, were you guided? You make it sound like you stumbled, but is there some master plan that Jai is being guided to? What do you get?
Well, I believe there's a master plan for all of us. And, just speaking for myself, yeah, most of the time I felt like I've been stumbling. But hopefully, every time I fall sort of in the right direction and pick myself up and I'm aware of this master plan, but I just do my best from on a day-to-day basis. It's hard for me to. Well, I don't know how to answer that question. Each day I wake up and I say some prayers, and I say, let me be in alignment with your plan. I say to my guru and to God, but I don't know what that plan is. But it seems like it was a nice. It seems like it's been a really good plan for me. I fought it a lot. I'm a recovering alcoholic, a recovering drug addict. And when I did get sober, which was like 20 years ago, I had already been, I was deeply into this path of devotional music and Kirtan. And, but I was very not in sync with my own self. Is that the way to put it? And then getting sober, and then meeting my wife, Nubia, in Brazil, and then having our child, and it was started in my 50s. Everything just opened up in this glorious way, and I can only be thankful about that. I have no idea why that happened, and doing this work, I'm doing the same thing. I mean, it's not the same, because musically I feel like I'm always evolving. But, the practice of singing these mantras is the same now as it was when I was in my 30s. But my life was really, the lows were quite low during my 30s and 40s. but I held, somehow singing these prayers and these mantras kept the thread of connection alive, and the occasional trips to India. And but then, really, when I got sober, and I guess the grace was always there, but I was putting up this wall to bounce it off of me, to not, I couldn't really accept the grace. And then around the time when I got sober, a lot of those walls they dissolved, and then I could feel how benevolent the universe was, and I could feel the gifts that my guru was consistently giving me. And now I'm 69, and I'm having some physical challenges, but other than that, I'm still on a daily basis amazed at the beauty of our life.
Oh.
Yeah, we certainly grew up in a magical time.
Yeah.
And Sasha's 80. He turned 80 July 9th, so
Sasha,
we're really grateful for everything.
That I bow to you. That's really something else. I'm so proud of you. How are you feeling?
Yoga works.
Yeah, he does yoga, and he rides his bike and goes to the gyms are closed, but goes to the beaches.
Yeah.
He exercises every day. He's amazing. Sasha, you're amazing.
Angie Arian is one of my teachers, and she said, be outside 3 hours a day and sing.
Wow. That's...
He can't carry a tune, but he sings for himself. The song is about your connection to yourself and spirit, I guess. Your connection to source.
Yeah.
Sing it.
I always share that with people that, I don't say you can't hold a tune, because I think everybody can hold their own tune. But I try so much to help people get beyond the self-criticism that doesn't let them just open up and sing. And, there's a whole, system of thought, I guess, I don't know if that's the right word, of aesthetics in devotional practices, that it doesn't matter what anybody else's ears or eyes are seeing. If you are finding the place of beauty inside of you and singing from that place, that's the aesthetics. It's not, it's completely internal, and you're singing to your soul, or you're singing to nature, or you're singing whatever, you're singing to, you're trying from your heart to make it as beautiful as possible, regardless of what anybody else might think. So I
arrived at your music. Sasha had, and I had not heard it before, and so he had all this spiritual music, and I came from a different background, and we I got a 200 or 300 CD player, and I put it on rotate, and every morning, eventually we wore it out. We broke the system, but and I immersed myself in the world of all this Indian music and spiritual music that I'd never heard before. And it's very transformative, especially if you listen to it almost 24/7. From the moment you get up to going to sleep, you're listening to incredible. I mean, who needs religion, right? It's religion, yeah.
Yeah, Ali Akbar Khan always said that music is my religion. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, so I was curious about your dad would bring, because you mentioned you became an alcoholic, in a sense I thought your upbringing was not the ultimate, but it seemed like you had some connection with your dad, because you said he was a record executive, Larry Uttal, and he would bring home the top 10 singles and play them for you and your sister and ask for your opinions.
Yeah.
So
this was a beautiful. My parents gave me music, and I'm forever thankful to them for that. My father, he was a musician, but he kind of gave up on being a musician because he felt he wasn't able to support his family. So he entered the music business, and after some time became an executive and owned a whole series of different record companies, and was pretty successful for a while, and then not which is the way the music business is. But there was a time, we grew up in New York City, and there was a time that every week he would bring from the radio stations the top 10, or maybe it was the top 20, I'm not sure if I remember correctly, singles that were being featured that week. And he would ask my sister and I, my sister is a year and a half older, what we thought about each one. And he never said that he was like taking notes, but he was really wanted to know what the young people's ear, what was, like waking up the young people's ears. And so that was always a great time, and my father also took me to some recording sessions. I don't know if you guys remember Mitch Ryder and the Detroit Wheels. Do you remember that artist?
Yeah. Oh, I do.
Yeah, Good Golly Miss Molly and Devil with the Blue Dress On.
Oh
yeah. Those were really potent records, and my father took me to. They were recording for my father's company, and he took me to those recording sessions, and that certainly planted a seed quite early on. My parents didn't want me to be a professional musician because they felt that it was too difficult, and so competitive, but being a musician was the only thing that I knew or loved, and I never had a backup plan. It was all I knew how to do and all I wanted to do. But that was a great gift. Our family life was pretty troubled, but that's not to say there wasn't rays of light, and that was one of them that happened every week for a couple of years. My record collection, which I no longer have, I had so many 45s, which would probably be very valuable right now, but I don't have them.
Right. Same here.
Yeah.
They would have countdown. I think they had 100 or something. The AM stations would play. We listened to AM back in those days.
Yeah, that was before FM.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
It was before,
And then you got the 45.
Yeah. By the way, we
So how did you get?
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
I want to know how you got sober. I'm really interested in that's what I'm a psychotherapist, and that's what fascinates me. What got you sober?
Well, I wanted to know what got you drinking. And was there something that made you weren't drinking for a long time, and then you started drinking? Was there? I guess I'm going cause and effect, but maybe there wasn't a cause. Was it some thought or starting to drink you in a social situation?
Oh boy. Well, yeah. Let's see. How do I answer these questions?
You don't want to.
No. I'm happy to. I just those are both very big questions that I'll try to, not take too long to answer them. But from the very beginning, I grew up. I was always feeling. I was so alienated. I didn't really have friends. I was afraid. My parents were. My mother was an alcoholic, and my father was an alcoholic, and they basically, well, they fought a lot, and there was a lot of tension in our home. I don't, in public, if we were sitting in my living room, I'd tell you everything, but I don't want to go into all those details. So of course then, as a young hippie, I started smoking pot I think I was 13, and, then taking acid and doing all that. But after a while, I found that what I really preferred was alcohol and opiates, because this place of fear in me, I just wanted to numb it, and I also, then as things evolved, I also had really bad stage fright, so I would definitely need to anesthetize myself as much as I could. And there were periods of sobriety, over these years. It wasn't constant, but then sometimes when I would go to India, I would find opium, and I would, that was like one of the great numbers. And well, okay, so this evolved, and by the time I was in my 40s, I was very involved with music and my band and my kirtan, my prayers, and still. But I also found that the addiction and the drinking, well, it got really, really, really out of hand. And I won't say that I don't think that I ever acted terribly in public, but I was also in a really difficult marriage, and how to tell this without the details, just to say that slowly everything fell apart. And my dear friend Tav, who was very, very close to Stan Groff, urged me. Many people were telling me I had to go to a treatment center, and they were all so angry at me and judging at me, and I resisted that. But with Tav, with so much love, gently convinced me to go to a treatment center, which I did in Oakland, and detoxing was very, very, very difficult, and the physical detoxing, and then of course there's the emotional detoxing, and then the spiritual detoxing. And I got sober and I stayed sober, and it was never easy, and even to this day it's not easy. But it's not tormenting, but it's there, For many years I went to 12-step meetings. I haven't been for quite a while,
So what do you do when you feel shy now?
Well, I always feel shy, but the question would be more like, what do you do when you feel terror? Before going in front of an audience. Well, what I do is simply, and it's not always now, but particularly when I first got sober, after covering that fear for so many years with so many drugs and drinking, I mean, it was amazing that I was still alive. And I began, this is what happened. I was in the treatment center, and toward the end of my stay there, I was feeling, good to be sober and to be clear and feel. But I realized that I would never, ever, ever, ever go on stage again, because that was such a trigger for my fear and being seen and being vulnerable, that I just wouldn't do it. And I'd try to figure out a different way to make a living. And then we watched a movie of Robin Williams live at Carnegie Hall. And so we're watching the movie, and I've always loved him. He was just so great, you know. And the first, like, say, 10 minutes or so of his performance are hysterically funny and really great. And then suddenly he ran to the tip of the stage, got down into a fetal position, and said, "This is the first time I've ever done this sober." And then he ran off the stage to the back. And you know, the audience was like kind of gasped, you know. And then he came back and continued his routine, and everyone just cheered him and applauded him. And I saw right then and there that the only way for me to make the next step was through complete honesty and vulnerability. So for quite a while, every time I would go out on the stage, I would speak to the audience and tell them, you know, I just want you guys to know that I'm very nervous in front of you, and you know, I used to, for many years, well, I didn't go into a full drug history with my audiences, but I talked to them as from a very vulnerable place, saying, you know, I've always had stage fright and I'm really nervous, and, you know, here we go, let's sing. But, you know, I really showed my humanness and my, you know, I was completely honest. And the amazing thing that I discovered was, I mean, it's not amazing, but it felt amazing, was simply that the more real and honest and vulnerable you are with people, the more they love you. And that people don't love the perfection person. They might admire them and be jealous of them, envious or something. But when they see the cracks in the vase, you know, when they see that you have human issues and human problems just like they do, we all love each other. It was really a profound discovery. So now I don't do it that much because I'm not that really nervous now, but I am very, I am very honest with my audiences as to what I'm feeling, and also, you know, try to bring humor into that. And yeah, that's just, so that became the way that I approached my, you know, life in the world, my professional life, my music, concerts, all that stuff. Without, you know, I realized that, you know, trying to be perfect and trying to, you know, like in theater, they say that you should construct the fourth wall. It's like an invisible wall between you and the audience. But what I learned in the treatment center was that I needed to deconstruct the fourth wall and be totally there with everybody, with all, you know, as I am, who I am, you know, which is different every day. And yeah, okay. So then, you know, then I did go, as I said, to meetings for many years. When we had our baby, I started gradually going to less meetings because I wanted to spend more time with my child and more time with my music and my family. And I've managed to stay sober one day at a time.
Wow, that's very interesting. Yeah, I always get a little stage fright. There's Sasha, and he's born with a mic in his hand. Do you ever experience stage fright, honey?
No, I was a child actor. I want that mic.
That's awesome. You know, because although I knew I was a musician from very young, the thing of being a performer didn't really enter my mind that like, okay, if you're going to make a living off of your music, you also have to be a performer. And I wasn't a performer, and I'm still, I would say, a reluctant performer. And one of the beauties of the music I do is that, yeah, it's partially performance, but mostly it's just like deep prayer. But I have become more comfortable. Sometimes you can't get me to shut up, and I talk to the groups and I laugh and stuff to the audiences. But yeah, becoming a performer was not an easy transition for me.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah,
that was
thank you.
Yeah. Who you are. So we're all in kind of this lockdown with COVID. How are you reaching the world now since you have a new, and what do you call it now? We call it an album, we call it a CD. I'm so confused. What do we call it? Digital. Yeah.
No, it's good. Since right before the quarantine, really, I started in December releasing singles. I'm still old, in my language. I'm still old school. I released a single in December, based on the 21st Psalm of King David from the Old Testament. And this was very, very, very different for me because, it was not Indian at all, but it was, very, very profound prayer. And it was just released on all the streaming platforms. And then when the pandemic hit, I released an album. I say album because it was, it's like about an hour's worth of music, but also on the streaming platforms, called Gory's Lullaby, and it's a instrumental, totally instrumental, meditative, healing music album. I had never done that before, but this is music that I play often at home, and the songs on that album had actually been created over the years as birthday presents for my wife, Nubia, and never intended for release. But then when the pandemic hit and, felt like the worldwide anxiety level went crazy, we decided it was time to put that music out into the world. And then just last week, I live in Marin County, and this is where San Quentin prison is. And over many years, I've been going there to sing with the guys and share kirtan in this practice. And through, a great error in judgment, now San Quentin is overcome by COVID-19, and it's so severe, and there's very little medical attention, and men are dying like crazy, and nobody is aware of this. So I wrote this song called Behind the Walls, and I wrote it very quickly and recorded it very quickly, and we released it on, all the streaming networks. Then as far as sharing with people, I've been doing many, many online concerts, mostly over Zoom, but some over Facebook Live and Instagram Live. And we also just completed an online Kirtan Camp. We've been doing 18 years, twice a year of Kirtan Camp. We're teaching and sharing Kirtan with a large group of people. And so we did it online, and contrary to my expectations, it was really, really beautiful. It was 110 people, and a real community bond was created through the singing, even though we didn't get to hug each other. We didn't get to, look each other in the face. But the connection was still there, and I was very, very moved by it. My wife she motivated it. I was, I didn't believe in it at first, but we put it together, and it just it was just so beautiful. So we're running that again in September, and then we're going to do a level 2 in December. So, we're trying our best to still stay connected with our community, both, close community as well as far away community. I feel like it's even more important now that people aren't able to hug each other or barely see each other. So it's even more important to send heart energy out into the world, which is what you guys are doing with the radio. It's the same kind of thing, sharing and connecting with people's hearts, even though we're not physically together.
And you can register on jayuttal.com, right?
Yes,
just
that's right.
The website.
Yeah, all my events and stuff, and that's JAIUTTAL.com. So all of that stuff is there, and links to Spotify and all that crazy streaming stuff is all on there too.